Benjamin, I want to come to you just on the sheer impact of this, your impression, besides, yes, the most advanced and largest nuclear aircraft carrier fleet coming to the Eastern Med, the sheer determination being displayed by the Secretary of State, taking it personally, as I've never heard him do, speak of himself as a Jew in association with Israel, with Israeli issues right now. What's your read on President Biden, Blinken, the United States, the impact of all the support we're seeing, unprecedented, arguably?
I think the support coming from the U.S. administration is remarkable, magnificent, needed, required, will strengthen us here in the States of Israel and the Jewish people around the world throughout the diaspora.
A morale boost at the very least.
And pardon me?
A morale boost.
A morale boost, certainly, but also with actions backing up the words. The maneuver of this aircraft carrier towards the region is a great deterrent to those who would perhaps be looking on and considering whether or not to weigh in on this war, perhaps opening up a front to our north. I do have to say there was much that was very positive in Secretary Blinken's speech, personalizing the matter, of course. That will hit home to those who question what actually is the real face of Hamas, who have done so for many years. Well, now they all know Hamas behave with levels of evil that are akin to those levels of evil shown by the Nazis. They are not the Nazis, however. They don't have the military capabilities of the Nazis, and most importantly, the Jews are not the same Jews from that era. The Jews here can fight back. The Jews here can turn this tide, and they will turn this tide, and you will see the Israel Defense Forces turn this wave back on those who brought it to our shores. Now, I do have to say, without wanting to open a discussion here with my colleague Robby, who I haven't had the privilege of meeting before, but I appreciate, what was bad in the speech, what was negative in the speech, this false idea that we can blanket all of the Palestinian Arabs with this excuse that they are not responsible for the actions of Hamas or that Hamas does not represent them. Not true. They came here by way of a democratic election. It was part of their charter that they wished to kill and murder Jews, not just Israelis. And quite frankly, in here we'll have a bit of a difference of opinion. I think a siege on the Gaza Strip is absolutely right and appropriate and is being in place as we speak, and any notion of money going and incentivizing any Palestinian to do that which is the most basic humane act, namely give information about where these hostages may be, is an ill-considered, perhaps well-intentioned notion, and I would encourage everybody to refrain from doing that. The government's policy is a siege on Hamas. It is not for private investors and donors, however well-intentioned they may be, to start funneling funds to Palestinian Arabs in the Gaza Strip. Absolutely not. Not a penny, no gas, no electricity, nothing. At the very least, our hostages must come home.
I have to echo that, what you're saying, Blinken saying, Hamas doesn't represent the Palestinians. Well, in the most recent elections they did represent the Palestinians.
Absolutely, they did. And Hamas's popularity, sir, is growing in Judea and Samaria in the West Bank.
And by all indicators, they are by far the most popular, call it political front of the Palestinians. So it's hard to make that distinction. Look, to step away from this, though, we have an important guest I have to bring into the studio, or into the discussion here with us here. We're joined by Yossi Landau. He's a commander of Zaka, coming from the South. Zaka now being the organization largely made up of volunteers who have been present at so many heinous attacks in the past, helping to preserve the dignity of bodies after these attacks. So, Yossi, thanks for being with us right now. Look, please, if you can share with our viewers, I know a lot of this is difficult, and a lot of this is fresh, just being digested right now. If you can share with our viewers around the world who care deeply what you've seen in these southern communities, perhaps even if you could tell us some of the worst things that you've seen.
Hi, good afternoon. How much we can tell that good afternoon in from our side. But as I said, I'm 33 years in the force. I saw everything all over the world.
Yeah.
If it's 9/11 attack, if it's a natural disaster, if it's a terror attack, I saw everything all over, and we thought that we saw the limit. When we got on the scene on Saturday, and I'm a father of 10 children, it was Saturday. And I had all my family with me, but I left my house with no questions and came over here to the south to help, to see what we can be to help. And when I saw the disaster, and in the beginning when we picked up people that were only shot or burned to death, and people that were shot more than once, and that to make sure that they're for sure dead. Okay, you know, we saw that, but when I came in 2 days ago to Kibbutz Be'eri, it's called, and our first stop, and we're talking about, I have 50 people on my team that going house to house and searching for bodies and to see what we can be helpful. And when we get into the house and we see a pregnant lady in the on the floor, and we turn her around, and the stomach is open, wide open. There's a baby connected, an unborn baby connected to the cord with a stabbed with a knife, and the mother is shot in the head. And you're over there, and you look, and you think, you use the imagination to think, what was first?
Yossi, that's obviously speechless. There's been a lot of controversy, Yossi, in the world denying these reports, saying that we're exaggerating the levels of the tragedy. Please speak to that, yes.
Or when we go to the next house and we see in the living room to see two parents, father and mother, hand tied in the back, and in the other side against them, the children, two small children, hand tied in the back, and in each of them were torched to see, and in the middle is a table where this terrorist were sitting and eating while they were torching the kids. And you use the imagination, who saw what, and you see missing parts on dead bodies. That's only for torch, and by the end, a gunshot wound. How more could that be?
Yeah. There were a great number of children taken out of these communities dead, Yossi?
Pardon me?
There's been a lot of controversy around reports of children, babies, as you're describing. There's been a lot of people out there trying to deny this, saying that we're exaggerating these reports of young children and babies killed in these communities. You've seen this.
I saw babies, I saw children. I saw a mother holding her baby, and only one bullet went through both of them together.
How much work is left to be done?
I saw 20 children together with the hand tied in the back, and they were burned, they're shot and burned in piles.
20 children shot and burned in a pile, Yossi?
And two piles, right.
How much work is left to be done, Yossi? How many bodies have we begun to tally the toll for real, or is it too overwhelming even at this point to know the extent?
My team in the first 4 days, we picked up, I saw bodies that I never saw in my life, 670 bodies.
Yossi, are you still combing these communities? Can you tell us already? Have at least all the dead been found? Do we think?
I don't know. We don't know.
Right.
We're still searching. We know that they. We know that was from yesterday that we found between the bodies of the terrorists. We found a civilian that we thought in the beginning it was because they dressed the civilian, and we don't know if that was before they were killed, or after they were killed, they dressed them up like a terrorist with a belt, that we should think that it's a terrorist.
So disguising some of the dead Israelis as Hamas terrorists. Yossi, can you tell us?
That's what they did.
Can you tell us some of the communities you mentioned where the children were slaughtered? Which towns? Where you mentioned Kibbutz Be'eri? Where were some of these worst atrocities?
And Far Gaza.
Far Gaza, as we reported earlier this week, yes, to a lot of controversy around the world, are reports of the children and babies being slaughtered in places like Far Gaza and Be'eri. Yossi Landau, I can only thank you for having the strength to come on our show here to impart this information to the world, and above and beyond all, for participating and helping down there in the South.
Please put a prayer for us and for our people and for our soldiers that we should stay normal after this, because there's no human being that could stay normal.
Yes.
We all have families. We want to go home to our children and raise them as a normal parent. And after seeing this thing, it's going to be very hard.
Yossi Landau again from Zaka. Thank you for joining us. Keep up the good work here. We have another guest with us right now on the line here. Chiel, thanks for being with us here. Tzvia Chiel, thanks for being with us. I know you have a personal story to share as well here. Please, our viewers looking in around the world need to know what's happened here. Tell us your situation.
Started 6:30 on Saturday morning. Two of my grandchildren were at the party for peace next to the Gaza border. They were hit by rockets, and the last phone call we had was at 6:30 when they called the parents and said, we have to leave the party because we're being bombed by rockets. They ran to the car, and as soon as they started to drive, they were hit by bullets and grenades and everything on earth. But and they stopped all the ways out of the party. So the last thing we know about them, that they were trying to flee the party, but we don't know anything after that. No one's seen them. No one's heard from them. We have gone through all the hospitals in Israel to see if they are wounded. We have sent DNA through the police to have all the bodies analyzed, and we still, after 7 days, don't know anything.
Wow. Do you have close contact with authorities at this point, though, or is there government, at least officials, in touch with you? No?
Nothing.
Do you feel alone? What's the sense right now in this moment? Do you feel a sense of community from those around you, or do you feel abandoned? What's the feeling right now?
Yes, we feel very abandoned because nobody from the authorities even calls us or tries to reach us or tries to come and give us some piece of either hope or information, but nothing happens. We have tried everything. We have called every person that could help us, people in the army. We have had interviews in all the different TV stations all over the world. And we were in papers here and there over the world, and nothing. We thought that maybe if we went out publicly, big, that maybe the authorities would wake up to do something about it. But I guess they're too busy with other things. So we don't do anything.
None of the video footage, nothing has shed light on the plight of your grandchildren?
No. I know two of my sons have been searching the ground where the party was, and they didn't find anything. And now there are two options. Either they are not with us anymore, or they are captured in Gaza, which we hope they're in a way. Because you never give up on life, you know.
No, of course not. Eva, this is an important moment. The world really watching. What's something you want people around the world to understand looking in right now?
This was Shoah number 2. I come from a Holocaust family. I grew up with parents from the Shoah, and I know all the stories and all the horror. And this is even worse than the horror, I think, what the Nazis did. And I don't want to live another Shoah again, which we are doing in this country right now. And all I want to is to know what's happened to my grandchildren, and hope that we will get them back. We need the world's help to get them back to us. And the only thing is to put pressure on Hamas and let the people that are captured in Gaza, let them go. And for Gaza, I don't wish very much. I think they should be finished.
I know this is a very different perspective than everyone had just a week ago, some days ago. Eva Chiel, thank you for being strong enough to appear on our program today, for giving this message to the world. Our hearts are with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
And we are coming back in the studio here again with our viewers who've been sitting through some of the agony of the testimony we've heard. Yes, Robby, I know.
Yeah, so I didn't really get a chance to respond to Benjamin. Look, I understand that governments shouldn't be giving money to terrorists to free hostages. That's a bad principle, and I'm not advocating that. But as you can see, there are many, and I'm think you can appreciate, there are many people in Israel whose loved ones are missing or taken hostage. They haven't heard anything from the government. We've just had one of the worst fiascos and failures in the history of the state of Israel, both military and intelligence. There's a lack of trust in the government, and there are people who are saying if we could do one thing, which is to help maybe one Palestinian do the right thing, which you're right, he should do it without getting paid money. But if there's a Palestinian out there who says, you know what, I could get $1 million shekel, I saw them move the captured Israelis, the hostages, into this room, I'm going to mail it in. What do you think?
Absolutely not. I'm not particularly here for this purpose. Robby, I appreciate the good intention that's behind it, but it's ill-conceived.
Why?
The fact of the matter is the way to incentivize the Palestinians to do that, which is the most basic humane act, namely say to whomever they can reach where these hostages are being held, the way to incentivize them is to bring them to their knees at this stage. It's not to enrich them. It's not to pump finances towards them. This has all been tried by individuals of your ilk who have said centre left, and I'm not here to decry the centre left. It's a legitimate voice.
You
it's not my voice.
The question.
No,
the question was, what's the downside of doing it?
My answer to because it enriches Palestinian Arabs, and it encourages. I'm completely against it under these circumstances. I think that you'll find yourself in a resoundingly minority voice. You are misguided, and furthermore, it will incentivize further kidnappings, knowing that some individuals, again, well-intentioned but misguided, and not in a position of authority.
What are you going to do?
Is highlighting, look, this is perhaps the most sensitive aspect of.
I'd like to talk about the security situation.
And of course, there are no clear answers. There are a lot of high emotions around this, and people desperate to do something to affect the situation in a better way. But Benjamin, I want to bring you into a discussion about what we're trying to reveal here.
Yes.
The importance of getting clarity of information, of getting it out to the world, the truth about what happened right now. And I think both of you understand this well, that we're facing already an onslaught of people trying to deny reports we're getting from people like Yossi who are on the ground seeing these horrors that he'll never unsee. How critical a moment are we, Benjamin, do you think, for this providing information to the world, to showing them what happened?
I think it's absolutely vital, unfortunately, that even the most graphic images and the most graphic pictures be circulated to the media, the international press. I think that the efforts are underway already to do that.
What I understand.
Several international, absolutely, and international cohorts being brought down to Otef Aza, to the area around the Gaza Strip, for journalists to see. There is precedent, unfortunately, for this unwillingness to accept what's being done to Jews. The Israeli poet Amir Gilboa wrote a 3-stanza composition, and he said, if I as a Jew show the nations of the world a tree, they will say, yes, it's a tree. And if I show them a stone, they'll say, yes, it's a stone. But if I show them Jewish blood spilled, they'll say it's not Jewish blood spilled, it's merely paint, it's merely color. And what we have to do is bring the world to understand that this is not merely paint, it's merely color. These are the bodies and the dead of the best of the states of Israel, the best of the Jewish people. And I'm afraid people aren't talking about it now because it's not befitting the moment to do so. But vengeance must be wrought against those who brought this about. Vengeance, not just the toppling, vengeance.
There's been a little talk about this, about the nature of the campaign to come. People
absolutely
trying to say this isn't revenge, it's not vengeance, it's a strategic move to eliminate a threat. Trying to frame this in a way that may help it be palatable to the world as casualties do pile up. We know the IDF, for example, already doing away with the so-called knock on the roof. Simply
Yes.
not enough aircraft
Rightly
for
so.
these kind of humanitarian actions anymore. They are still delivering phone calls and warnings, I know, to people of Gaza, but we are going to see major loss in this conflict to come, likely on both sides. Rob, do you think that that's where a lot of the planning is today, is sort of how to mitigate, how to manage, even how to package, what's about to happen to the world? Should that be a priority of the Israeli thinkers right now?
I'm very concerned about what's going on at the level of the Israeli government at this time. First of all, and I think Robby will agree with me here, an absolute disgrace that it takes 3-4 days for them to negotiate whether or not to have a unity government. That shows how divided we were, unnecessarily so, in advance of this. And it's tragic that an event such as this is required to bring us together. Having said that, I strongly advocate for us watching and learning as this operation develops, because though we have Prime Minister Netanyahu there leading this, and we have this reduced cabinet now, which includes Benny Gantz and Gadi Eisenkot, 2 former chiefs of staff, these are 3 people who have worked together in the past on the Gaza front, and they have always chosen a limited incursion, if an incursion at all. I don't know that they will discover a new way of doing things. There's one wrinkle in my theory there. It has a name. Its name is Yoav Gallant, the current Minister of Defense. We'll see if Yoav Gallant is strong enough, can pound his fist on the table hard enough and with sufficient vigor. I believe that he can. I hope that he will. And I hope that we will remove some of those obstacles to free movement in a battlefield. I say this as a combat veteran myself. I don't think it's necessary for a knock on the roof. If we want to make those phone calls, that's appropriate and proper. We are not terrorists. But beyond that, after a warning comes, and no warning was provided to our citizens, soldiers and civilians, once a warning is in, action must be taken.
Look, the West Bank, how critical of an arena is that in this moment right now, where so much attention has been by the security administration in the last year, year and a half, 2 years, arguably, while the Gaza Strip has been mostly quiet. What are the risks? What are the real? As we're talking about a place that's not contained, so to say, like Gaza. Not that Gaza was truly contained, as we learned hard, but it's much more, integrated between where the Jewish communities are living there. What are the major risks there? Should we be heightened alert as well in the West Bank?
I think that we have to be heightened in Judea and Samaria on a couple of different fronts, and I've operated in those areas extensively during my military career and my military service. First of all, I think it's very, very important that we seize and take advantage of where the world is watching. And what I mean by that is using misdirection to our benefit. Militarily, right now the world has its eyes trained on the Gaza Strip. What we do in the Gaza Strip will be projected throughout the world, as you've just alluded to in your question. Having said that, that's also an opportunity. As the world watches the Gaza Strip, that enables us to maneuver with greater opportunity in Judea and Samaria and the West Bank. And we must maneuver there in order to dismantle Hamas cells and terrorist organizations that are there. We also have to watch out for any revenge attacks undertaken by vigilantes from among our own people, because that will, first of all, it would not be appropriate, but secondly, that will reduce the level of support that we have both here and internationally.
Now, critically, in Blinken's statement there, he said that all of the defensive needs of Israel will be met. That seems like a major statement from the Secretary of State, as this very open-ended, massive conflict, looming over our heads, seemingly inevitable right now. Is it hard to overstate the importance of that?
It's not difficult to overstate the importance of that. It's a very, very important statement. And also what he didn't say, now he may have said this elsewhere, but he did not say that he calls for a ceasefire. That line will come. Okay. There will be the utterance that it's time to move towards a ceasefire and make efforts to stop the conflict. That's why I implore this Israeli government to move swiftly. And incidentally, a lot of people again are saying this is not the right time, but I will say it. Prime Minister Netanyahu and the upper echelons of the defense establishment should fight and fight as though this is their last battle, because I have a suspicion that when the dust settles, it will be proven to be the case that it is.
How does that factor in, do you think, in terms of the minds of the top military echelon, the top political echelon, who know this, who know that this is their last fight, whether or not they're acting like it yet in public? this is their last fight. How does that affect, or does it degrade, the ability of the army to function? Or, how is that a factor right now? The sort of the weight of the failure hanging on the leaders right now.
That weight of the failure, as you've just said, that's exactly what they should be governed by. They should take actions that are the very inverse of the magnitude of their failure and turn it towards a successful battlefield operation. It needs to be crashing. It needs to be decisive. They do need to topple Hamas. Nothing short of that is acceptable. I hope that they will move towards it, but yes, absolutely. I can tell you, I'm firmly of the belief that not only of Prime Minister Netanyahu, but again of the senior defense establishment, this will be their last fight. So I implore them to make it count.
They must go home. They must.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
the biggest operation of military intelligence and military failure probably in the history of Israel, and they all have to bear responsibility for it.
And possibly the international community as well. The biggest failure anywhere that we've seen in the international community of intelligence of the military, to your
Just
point.
staggering. I need to jump to the north again here, to State Road, where our correspondent Ariel Serrano is standing by, this being the war front of the last 6 days. Ariel, nothing different this morning. Still rocket fire raining on that town. Casualties inflicted. In general, beyond State Road as well. Ariel, what do you tell us about the status of all the, the battleground that has been since Saturday? What do we know about how secure it is at this point, and, the recovery in that area?
Right, David. So in a briefing that Israel's military spokesperson, Daniel Agari, gave this morning, he once again reiterated the pretty harrowing fact that there could still be terrorists walking around in southern Israel today. While since Saturday, there have been hundreds, perhaps over 1,000 bodies of terrorists identified. There are still pockets. There are still those who have infiltrated on Saturday, Hamas terrorists, fighters, and were not activated immediately or did participate in the carnage and then hid or did not participate and are waiting for marching orders. Since Saturday, after the war, basically since Sunday, we could say there have been 40 terrorists killed by Israeli forces in southern Israel. And with the border fence open in more than 20 different spots, gaps that still remain because the border is still very dangerous right now. Israel is, the IDF says that it's guarding each one of those gaps with tanks, with Air Force, but the situation here is still very, very dangerous, and that's why you do not see people walking around. The moment you approach like a 10-mile radius to the area, all civilian cars turn into emergency services cars, police, paramedics, army. That's everyone who you see. That's all you see walking around here. And it's very quiet except for the booms of whether artillery shelling of Gaza or interceptions of rockets launched at these border towns, or the rumble of air fighter jets. That is the noise. Those are the sounds that we're hearing here, not the sounds of children laughing and playing or families walking around just enjoying this October beautiful weather here. But that's not the case. This isn't your usual October in Israel. It's actually the complete opposite.
Ariel Serrano coming to us from State Road again, the site of the updates this morning. Again, a direct hit of a rocket right there where you're standing. And I want to bring it into our studio for just the few minutes we have left before we step out, let others take over, continue the live broadcast here. And Benjamin, I think the big picture that's become clear, it seems from wall to wall, is that what the reality that was is gone. The strategic doctrines that we stood on have crumbled underneath us. What changes from here? How do we approach the region? Where does the country go from here, besides defeating Hamas?
I think when one thinks about our position in the region, our position in the region will last only as long as we're able to demonstrate that if such horrors are visited upon our people, we will destroy, not deter, but destroy those who bring such horrors to our shores, to our homes, to our families. Anything short of that, those in the region will look on and understand that we are not ready for or willing to fight in the manner that is required. It's a message to the international community, that which we do there in the Gaza Strip, and I very much hope that there will be a conclusive, decisive ground offensive. And I say this as someone who's a veteran of service on the ground here in the Israel Defense Forces. I also want to say one thing. I went and visited somebody very, very dear to me who's been called to the front. He's in tanks. I can tell you that the morale among the Miloimnikim, among the reservists, is high, and anything that anyone can do to send equipment and food down to those soldiers, he personally told me, raises that morale yet further. This is clear-cut. This is not complex. This is not complicated. This is black and white. This is evil against the righteous, and we are involved in a righteous fight. I can tell you also that in our organization, if people wish to do it, if they visit our website, the Miriam Institute, we have a kitchen and an events hall that is distributing food to families, civilians, soldiers, and we will be doing the same with equipment. People can get on our website and see that. But most importantly, yes, a message to Hamas, yes, a message to the international community, but most importantly, a message to our own civilians and citizens that such a failure will never occur again. That begins with a strong offensive.
And I also think we need to apologize to all the settlements around Gaza that we let them for 20 years. For 20 years, we let them get occasional missiles, run for the shelters, live in fear. And we're living in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, somewhere north. It's not part of us. We did our best. We have to deter, but we're not going to destroy.
It's a phase.
We really owe them an apology.
Benjamin Anthony and Robby Berman, thanks for joining us here. Difficult subject matter and complex issues, a lot to discuss, so thank you both for joining.